In a bustling city filled with towering skyscrapers and luxurious estates, there lived an arrogant millionaire named Richard. He was known for his wealth, but also for his condescending attitude toward those he deemed beneath him. His mansion stood on a hill overlooking the city, its gleaming windows reflecting the sunlight during the day and glowing warmly at night. Inside, everything was pristine, every piece of furniture polished, every corner dust-free. This perfection wasn't achieved by magic. It was thanks to the hard work of his housekeeping staff, among whom was Maria, a diligent black maid who had been working for Richard for several years. Maria was no ordinary maid. Though her job required long hours and physical labor, she carried herself with dignity and grace. What set her apart even more was her insatiable thirst for knowledge. While others might have seen cleaning as just a means to make ends meet, Maria viewed it as an opportunity to save enough money to pursue her dreams. During breaks, instead of gossiping or scrolling through social media like some of her coworkers, she would sit quietly in a corner, reading books borrowed from the local library. Her favorite subject? Languages. Over the years, Maria had taught herself multiple languages: French, Spanish, German, Italian, Russian, and even bits of Latin. She didn't attend fancy schools or take expensive courses. She relied solely on free resources, determination, and countless late nights after her shifts ended. To her, learning new languages was like unlocking secret doors to different worlds. It gave her a sense of freedom that her everyday life often lacked. But despite her talents, very few people noticed or cared. To most, including Richard, she was simply the help. Richard, on the other hand, was the complete opposite of Maria. Born into privilege, he had never struggled for anything in his life. Money flowed effortlessly into his bank account, allowing him to indulge in whatever whim struck him. His mansion was filled with lavish items collected over the years: expensive paintings, rare antiques, and shelves upon shelves of books. But here's the thing about Richard. He didn't actually read those books. Most of them were purchased purely for show, their spines uncracked and pages untouched. They served as decorations, meant to impress visitors rather than educate their owner. One fateful afternoon, as Richard lounged on his leather couch, scrolling through documents on his tablet, he glanced up and noticed Maria dusting one of the bookshelves in his study. The shelf held rows of foreign language books he'd bought during trips abroad, titles he couldn't even pronounce, let alone understand. An idea struck him, fueled by boredom and his usual disdain for others. Smirking, he called out to Maria. "Hey, you," he said sharply, snapping her attention away from her task. "Come here for a second." Maria turned around, holding the feather duster in one hand. She approached cautiously, sensing the mocking tone in his voice. "Yes, Mr. Richard?" She asked politely, maintaining eye contact, though his gaze made her uncomfortable. "So," Richard drawled, leaning back on the couch with an air of superiority, "you think you're smart, huh? All these big words floating around in your head while you scrub toilets and mop floors?" He gestured vaguely toward the bookshelf behind her. "Well then, prove it. Translate this." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed a random French novel from the shelf and tossed it onto the coffee table between them. Maria stared at the book, her heart pounding. She knew exactly what was happening here. This wasn't curiosity or admiration. It was mockery. Richard wanted to embarrass her, to remind her of her place in his world. For a moment, she considered ignoring him, walking away and continuing with her duties. After all, why should she entertain such cruelty? But then something inside her stirred, a mix of pride and defiance. Why shouldn't she show him what she was capable of? Why should she let his arrogance go unchecked? Taking a deep breath, Maria picked up the book and flipped to the first page. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear but from anticipation. She cleared her throat and began translating aloud in perfect French. Her voice was calm yet confident, each word flowing effortlessly, as if she were speaking her native tongue. Richard's smug grin faltered slightly as he listened, his eyebrows knitting together in confusion. How could someone like her speak French so fluently? When she finished the paragraph, Maria looked up at him, meeting his stunned expression with a steady gaze. "Would you like me to continue, sir?" she asked coolly, her tone respectful but laced with quiet triumph. For a brief moment, Richard was speechless. Then, shaking off his surprise, he sneered and reached for another book. This time, a German novel. "Fine," he muttered, tossing it onto the table. "Let's see if you can handle this one." Without missing a beat, Maria switched languages and began reading in flawless German. Again, her pronunciation was impeccable, her cadence smooth. Richard watched her closely, his initial amusement giving way to unease. One by one, he tested her with increasingly obscure languages: Italian, Spanish, even Russian. Each time, Maria delivered without hesitation, leaving him visibly unsettled. By the end of their impromptu session, his mockery had turned into quiet disbelief. For once, someone had outsmarted him in his own game. As Maria returned to her duties, Richard sat silently on the couch, staring at the books scattered across the table. He couldn't wrap his mind around what had just happened. How could a maid, woman who cleaned his house for a living, possess such extraordinary skills? It didn't fit into his worldview, where people like him were superior and people like her were, well, invisible. Yet there was no denying the truth. Maria had proven herself smarter than he ever expected, and it infuriated him. Little did Richard know this encounter was only the beginning. Unbeknownst to him, Maria's actions that day would spark a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. For now, however, Richard stewed in his frustration, determined to find a way to put Maria back in her place. Meanwhile, Maria walked away with her head held high, knowing she had stood up for herself in the best way possible, not with anger or resentment, but with intelligence and grace. The mansion seemed quieter than usual that evening, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The next morning, the atmosphere in Richard's mansion was tense. Word of what had happened between him and Maria spread quickly among the household staff. While some admired Maria's composure and intellect, others whispered nervously about potential retaliation from Richard. It wasn't uncommon for him to lash out when his ego was bruised, and everyone knew this incident had wounded it deeply. Richard woke up that day with a scowl etched onto his face. He hadn't slept well, tossing and turning as his mind replayed the events of the previous afternoon. How could a maid, a woman who cleaned floors and scrubbed toilets, outsmart him so effortlessly? The thought gnawed at him, eating away at his pride like termites devouring wood. As he sat at the breakfast table sipping his coffee, he stared blankly at the newspaper in front of him, though he wasn't really reading it. Instead, his thoughts were consumed by one question. What am I going to do about Maria? By mid-morning, Richard decided on a plan. If he couldn't belittle her intelligence directly, he would find other ways to undermine her confidence. Over the next few days, he began assigning her increasingly difficult tasks. She was given extra cleaning duties, forced to polish every piece of silverware twice over, even though it already gleamed. He made sure she worked longer hours, leaving her exhausted by the end of each shift. Every time she completed a task, he found something trivial to criticize, whether it was the way she folded towels or arranged flowers in vases. But Maria didn't crack under the pressure. No matter how much Richard tried to wear her down, she remained calm and professional. Her movements were deliberate, her focus unwavering. When he complained about her work, she simply nodded, apologized politely, and fixed whatever he deemed unsatisfactory without argument. Deep down, however, Maria felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She knew exactly what Richard was trying to do, and she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. During breaks, Maria confided in her best friend Clara, another maid, who shared her love for learning. Clara listened intently as Maria recounted the details of her encounters with Richard. "That man is unbelievable," Clara said, shaking her head in disbelief. "He thinks he can make you feel small just because you let him win once." "I didn't let him win," Maria corrected gently, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. I proved my worth and he knows it. That's why he's acting this way now. Clara grinned. You're right. But I think we should turn this into something bigger, something good. What do you mean? Maria asked, tilting her head. Curiously? Well, Clara began, leaning forward excitedly. We've seen how talented you are with languages. Why not share that talent with the rest of us? We could start little study sessions during our breaks. You could teach us basic phrases in different languages. Think about it. It'll be fun, and maybe it'll inspire others to learn more too. At first, Maria hesitated. Teaching others wasn't something she'd ever considered before. It sounded like a lot of responsibility, especially since she still had her own studies to keep up with. But the more she thought about it, the more appealing the idea became. After all, knowledge had changed her life in profound ways. Maybe it could do the same for others. And so, the secret study sessions began. During lunch breaks and brief respites throughout the day, Maria gathered a small group of interested coworkers in an unused corner of the kitchen. Armed with scraps of paper and borrowed books, she started teaching them simple words and phrases in French, Spanish, and German. At first, the lessons were informal, filled with laughter and playful mistakes. But as weeks passed, the group grew more serious, their enthusiasm infectious. Even those who initially doubted their ability to learn picked up bits and pieces, surprising themselves with their progress. Meanwhile, Richard continued his attempts to humiliate Maria, oblivious to the ripple effect she was creating among the staff. One evening, while hosting a high-profile dinner party, he saw an opportunity to put her back in her place publicly. The guests were seated around the grand dining table, indulging in gourmet dishes prepared by Richard's private chef. Crystal. Glasses clinked softly as conversations flowed, punctuated by polite laughter. Everything seemed perfect, or so Richard believed. As dessert was served, Richard motioned for Maria to enter the dining room. Holding a folded note in his hand, he handed it to her with a smug grin. Here's a challenge for you, he announced, loudly enough for the guests to hear. Translate this. The note was written in Latin, an ancient language he assumed would stump her. All eyes turned toward Maria, who stood quietly, holding the paper in her hands. For a moment there was silence. The weight of the situation pressed down on her, but Maria didn't falter. Taking a deep breath, she began translating aloud. Her voice carried through the room, steady and confident, as she unraveled the meaning of the text word by word. The guests listened intently, their initial amusement turning into awe as Maria flawlessly interpreted the note. Some exchanged impressed glances. Others leaned forward, captivated by her skill. By the time she finished, the room was completely silent. Even Richard couldn't hide his astonishment. His plan to embarrass her had backfired spectacularly. One of the guests, a renowned linguistics professor named Dr. Evelyn Hart, approached Maria after the meal. That was extraordinary, Dr. Hart said warmly, extending her hand. Your grasp of Latin is remarkable. Where did you learn it? Maria smiled modestly. I taught myself, ma'am. I've always loved languages. Dr. Hart nodded thoughtfully. Well, your dedication deserves recognition. Have you ever considered pursuing formal education in linguistics? There's a scholarship program at the university where I teach. I'd be happy to recommend you if you're interested. For a moment, Maria was speechless. A scholarship, formal education. These were things she had dreamed of but never thought possible. Though hesitant due to financial constraints and the demands of her current job, she realized this might be the chance she needed to step into a brighter future. With encouragement from Clara and the rest of her colleagues, Maria accepted Dr. Hart's offer, knowing it was a turning point in her life. As news of Maria's achievements spread beyond the mansion walls, Richard found himself increasingly isolated. Guests who attended the dinner party talked about her brilliance, often comparing her favorably to him. His reputation suffered greatly, while hers soared. People began to see him not as a powerful millionaire, but as a petty man who sought to diminish others to elevate himself. For once, Richard's wealth and status couldn't shield him from the consequences of his actions. Back at the mansion, the staff rallied around Maria, celebrating her success and drawing inspiration from her journey. They no longer viewed themselves as mere servants, but as individuals capable of achieving greatness despite their circumstances. Together, they vowed to support Maria as she balanced her new academic pursuits with her responsibilities at work. Their bond grew stronger, transforming the household into a community united by hope and determination. Through it all, Maria remained humble, never forgetting where she came from or the people who helped her along the way. She understood that true strength lies not in tearing others down but in lifting them up. And though challenges lay ahead, she faced them with courage, knowing she wasn't alone. Maria's decision to pursue formal education marked a new chapter in her life, one filled with excitement, challenges, and moments of self-doubt. Balancing her studies with her job at Richard's mansion was no easy feat. Her days began before sunrise as she woke up early to review notes or practice pronunciation before heading to work. At the mansion, she carried out her duties with the same diligence as always, though Richard's lingering resentment made things more difficult than they needed to be. Richard, still smarting from his public humiliation, continued to make Maria's life harder whenever he could. He piled on extra chores, criticized her work mercilessly, and even went so far as to cut her lunch breaks short. But Maria refused to let his behavior break her spirit. Instead, she used it as fuel to push herself further. He can try to slow me down, she thought during one particularly grueling shift. But he can't stop me. During breaks, Maria found solace in the study sessions she conducted with her coworkers. These gatherings had become a source of strength for everyone involved. What started as informal language lessons had evolved into something much deeper, a shared mission to empower themselves through knowledge. Clara, ever the cheerleader, encouraged Maria to keep going whenever she felt overwhelmed. "You're not just doing this for yourself," Clara reminded her one afternoon. "You're showing all of us what's possible." The support from her colleagues meant everything to Maria. It gave her the courage to face long nights spent poring over textbooks after finishing her shifts. She often stayed up until the wee hours of the morning, memorizing verb conjugations, analyzing complex grammar rules, and writing essays in languages she had only recently begun mastering formally. Despite her exhaustion, there was a sense of fulfillment that kept her going, a feeling that she was finally stepping closer to the dreams she'd held on to for so long. As weeks turned into months, Maria's hard work began to pay off. Her professors at the university were astounded by her progress. Dr. Evelyn Hart, who had initially recommended her for the scholarship, took a special interest in Maria's development. "You have a gift," Dr. Hart told her during one of their meetings. "Not just for languages, but for understanding cultures. That's rare, and it's something you should nurture." With Dr. Hart's guidance, Maria enrolled in advanced courses that challenged her intellectually while broadening her horizons. She learned about translation theory, cultural diplomacy, and the role of language in shaping global relationships. Each class opened her eyes to new possibilities, making her realize how vast the world truly was, and how much she wanted to be part of it. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Richard's frustration reached new heights. No matter how hard he tried to undermine Maria, she remained unshaken. In fact, she seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. The other staff members noticed this too. Inspired by her resilience, they began standing up to Richard in small, but significant ways. When he complained about trivial details, they defended their work with quiet confidence. When he tried to pit them against one another, they stood united, refusing to play his games. One evening, as Richard hosted yet another dinner party, tensions between him and the household staff reached a boiling point. This time, however, it wasn't Maria who became the center of attention. It was Clara. During dessert, Clara accidentally spilled a glass of red wine on one of Richard's expensive Persian rugs. Panic flickered across her face as she quickly moved to clean it up. But Richard erupted in anger. "How dare you ruin my property?" he barked, towering over her. "Do you have any idea how much this rug costs? You'll pay for this out of your salary." Clara froze, unsure of what to say. Before she could respond, Maria stepped forward. "Mr. Richard," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "It was an accident. Accidents happen. Punishing Clara won't fix the rug, and it certainly won't improve morale among the staff. The guests fell silent, watching the exchange unfold. Richard glared at Maria, his face turning red with rage. "Don't tell me how to run my household," he snapped. "You're nothing but a maid. Remember your place." Maria met his gaze, without flinching. "My place is wherever I choose to stand," she replied calmly. "And right now I'm standing beside my friend." For a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. Then, to everyone's surprise, one of the guests, a prominent businesswoman named Sarah, spoke up. "I must say, Mr. Richard," Sarah said coolly, "your staff seems far more impressive than you give them credit for. Perhaps instead of focusing on trivial mistakes, you should appreciate their dedication." The comment stung, and Richard knew it. For once, he didn't have a clever retort. Instead, he stormed out of the dining room, leaving the guests to finish their meal in awkward silence. Afterward, several of them approached Maria and Clara, expressing admiration for their bravery. Some even offered words of encouragement, telling them not to let anyone diminish their worth. That night, as the staff gathered in the kitchen for their usual debriefing, the atmosphere was electric. Everyone buzzed with excitement over what had happened at the dinner party. "Did you see the look on his face?" Clara laughed, reenacting Richard's tantrum to the amusement of her co-workers. Priceless. But Maria stayed quiet, reflecting on the bigger picture. While the incident had been satisfying, it also highlighted the deep-seated issues within Richard's household. The staff deserved better, not just better treatment, but better opportunities. They had proven time and again that they were capable of greatness, yet Richard continued to treat them as disposable cogs in his machine. The following week, Maria decided to take action. With Clara's help, she drafted a proposal outlining ways to improve working conditions at the mansion. Among the suggestions were fairer wages, guaranteed breaks, and access to educational resources for all employees. Armed with this document, Maria requested a meeting with Richard. When the day came, Maria entered Richard's study with determination written all over her face. He looked up from his desk, clearly annoyed by her presence. "What do you want now?" he asked irritably. "I want to talk about changes that need to be made here," Maria said, placing the proposal on his desk. "Changes that will benefit both you and the staff." Richard scoffed. "Benefit me? Don't waste my time with nonsense." "It's not nonsense," Maria countered, her tone steady. "Happy employees work harder and more efficiently. If you invest in us, we'll invest in you. It's simple logic." To her surprise, Richard actually read through the proposal. As he flipped through the pages, his expression shifted from skepticism to reluctant consideration. While he hated to admit it, some of Maria's points made sense. Still, his pride wouldn't allow him to accept advice from someone he considered beneath him. "I'll think about it," he muttered dismissively, handing the papers back to her. But Maria knew better than to expect immediate change. Progress, she realized, often came slowly, and sometimes required patience and persistence. Over the next few months, Maria continued to advocate for her co-workers while excelling in her studies. Her grades soared, earning her praise from professors and classmates alike. Outside of school, she volunteered at community centers, teaching free language classes to underprivileged children and adults. Word of her efforts spread, and soon she became a local hero in her neighborhood. Back at the Bauer mansion, subtle changes began to emerge. Though Richard resisted implementing all of Maria's suggestions, he did make minor adjustments, such as restoring full lunch breaks and reducing unnecessary workload. More importantly, the staff felt empowered to speak up when treated unfairly. Their unity created a ripple effect, transforming the once toxic environment into a space where mutual respect slowly took root. As Maria balanced her dual roles, as a student and a maid, she never lost sight of her ultimate goal, to create a better future not just for herself, but for those around her. Through every challenge, she reminded herself of the lesson she had learned early on. True strength lies in lifting others up, even when the world tries to pull you down. And though the road ahead was uncertain, Maria faced it with unwavering hope, knowing that she was paving the way for something greater than herself. As Maria's journey continued, her life began to transform in ways she had once only dreamed of. The combination of her academic success and her growing influence within Richard's household gave her a newfound confidence. She no longer saw herself as just a maid. She was a leader, a teacher, and an advocate for change. Her days were packed with responsibilities: cleaning the mansion, attending university lectures, volunteering at community centers, and mentoring her co-workers. But she embraced every challenge with determination. At the university, Maria quickly became one of the standout students in her program. Her professors marveled at her ability to grasp complex concepts so effortlessly. During class discussions, she often contributed insights that surprised even seasoned scholars. Maria has a unique perspective, Dr. Evelyn Hart remarked during one lecture. She understands language not just as a tool for communication, but as a bridge between cultures. That kind of empathy is invaluable. Outside of academics, Maria immersed herself in extracurricular activities. She joined a student organization focused on promoting multilingual education and cultural exchange. Through this group, she organized workshops and events aimed at raising awareness about the importance of language diversity. One of her proudest achievements was hosting a storytelling night where participants shared personal narratives in their native languages. The event drew a large crowd, including students, faculty members, and local residents. For many attendees, it was their first time hearing stories told in languages like Swahili, Mandarin, or Urdu, a powerful reminder of how much the world had to offer beyond familiar borders. Back at the mansion, Maria's efforts to improve working conditions slowly gained traction. Though Richard remained resistant to implementing all of her suggestions, he couldn't ignore the positive changes happening around him. Morale among the staff had improved significantly since Maria introduced her proposal. People worked together more harmoniously, supporting each other instead of competing for Richard's approval. Even Clara noticed a shift. "It's like we're building our own little family here," she said one evening during a break, "and you're the glue holding us together." But while progress was being made, challenges still loomed. Richard's resentment toward Maria hadn't faded. If anything, it grew stronger as her accomplishments piled up. He hated the idea of someone from his staff surpassing him in any way, especially someone he viewed as inferior. His behavior became increasingly erratic, alternating between passive-aggressive comments and outright hostility. Yet Maria refused to let his negativity affect her. Instead, she channeled her energy into helping others rise above similar obstacles. One day, an unexpected opportunity arose that would test Maria's resolve like never before. A prominent international organization specializing in cultural diplomacy reached out to her after learning about her work through Dr. Hart. They invited her to apply for a prestigious internship program designed to train future leaders in global relations. The position required candidates to demonstrate exceptional linguistic skills, cultural sensitivity, and leadership potential, all qualities Maria possessed in abundance. Excited yet nervous, Maria spent weeks preparing her application. She poured her heart into writing essays that highlighted her journey, her passion for languages, and her vision for fostering cross-cultural understanding. When the deadline arrived, she submitted her materials with trembling hands, unsure if she stood a chance against applicants from elite universities around the world. Weeks passed, and just when Maria began to doubt whether she'd hear back, an email appeared in her inbox. It was from the organization. Heart-pounding, she opened the message and read the words she had been hoping for. "Congratulations. You have been selected for our internship program." Tears welled up in her eyes as she reread the email multiple times, trying to process what it meant. This wasn't just another milestone, it was a gateway to a future she had always imagined, but never thought possible. The internship would take her to different countries, exposing her to real-world issues and giving her the tools to make a tangible impact. But it also meant leaving behind the familiarity of her current life, including her job at the mansion and the people who had supported her along the way. Maria broke the news to her co-workers during their next study session. At first, there was Silence as everyone absorbed the information. Then one by one they erupted into cheers and applause. "We knew you could do it," Clara exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "You're going places, Maria, big places." Though thrilled by their encouragement, Maria couldn't shake the guilt gnawing at her. "I'll miss you all," she admitted softly. "This place, and all of you, are part of who I am now. I wouldn't be here without your support." "You don't owe us anything," Clara reassured her. "You've already given us so much, now it's your turn to chase your dreams. Just promise to come visit us sometimes, okay?" Maria nodded, smiling through tears. She knew this decision wouldn't be easy, but deep down, she felt ready. Ready to step into the unknown, to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and to continue, proving that intelligence and resilience can overcome even the greatest odds. Meanwhile, Richard reacted predictably when Maria informed him of her plans. "So you're leaving?" he asked coldly, his tone dripping with disdain. "Running off to play diplomat now, are we?" "It's an internship," Maria replied calmly. "And yes, I'm leaving. But I wanted to thank you for everything. Even if it didn't seem like it at the time, working here taught me a lot." Richard snorted. "Don't get sentimental on me. You were just a maid. Don't forget where you came from." "I won't," Maria said, meeting his gaze steadily. "But maybe you should remember where you come from too. Wealth doesn't define greatness, Mr. Richard. Character does." Her words struck a nerve, though Richard tried to mask it with indifference. As Maria walked away, he found himself reflecting on her statement. Over the years, he had built a reputation based on wealth and power, yet lately those things felt hollow. People respected Maria, not because of what she owned, but because of who she was. And for the first time, Richard wondered if he had been chasing the wrong kind of legacy. In the weeks leading up to her departure, Maria prepared diligently for the internship. She attended orientation sessions, studied visa requirements, and researched the countries she would visit. Each task brought a mix of excitement and anxiety, but she reminded herself why she was doing this. This wasn't just about personal growth. It was about creating opportunities for others like her, people who deserved a chance to shine despite their circumstances. On her final day at the mansion, the staff threw a farewell party in her honor. They decorated the kitchen with balloons and streamers, filling the space with laughter and music. Clara presented Maria with a handmade scrapbook filled with photos, notes, and memories from their time together. "For whenever you need a reminder of home," Clara said, handing it to her. Maria hugged each of her co-workers tightly, promising to stay in touch. As she left the mansion for the last time, she paused at the gates, looking back at the place that had shaped so much of her life. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, the friendships forged, and the strength she had discovered within herself. The next morning, Maria boarded a plane bound for Geneva, Switzerland, where the internship program was headquartered. As the aircraft soared into the sky, she gazed out the window, watching the clouds stretch endlessly below. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream freely, to imagine a future unburdened by limitations or prejudice. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. After all, she had already proven that no obstacle was insurmountable when paired with courage and perseverance. And so, Maria embarked on the next chapter of her journey, carrying with her the hopes and dreams of everyone who had believed in her. Though miles away from the mansion and the people she loved, she carried their spirit with her wherever she went. Because in the end, true greatness isn't measured by titles or accolades. It's measured by the lives you touch and the legacy you leave behind. Maria's arrival in Geneva marked the beginning of a transformative chapter in her life. The city was a vibrant blend of cultures, languages, and ideas, a place where diplomats, scholars, and activists from around the world converged to tackle global challenges. For Maria, stepping into this dynamic environment felt like entering a new universe. Everything about it, the bustling streets, the towering international organizations, the diverse faces, was exhilarating and overwhelming all at once. Her internship program was housed within one of the most prestigious cultural diplomacy institutions in the world. From day one, Maria immersed herself fully in its rigorous schedule. She attended workshops on conflict resolution, participated in simulated negotiations, and collaborated with peers from dozens of countries. Each activity pushed her out of her comfort zone, forcing her to adapt quickly and think critically. Yet despite the intensity, Maria thrived. Her natural curiosity and years of self-taught learning served her well, earning praise from mentors and colleagues alike. One of her first major assignments involved translating documents for a high-level conference focused on education reform in underserved communities. Though daunting, the task allowed Maria to showcase her linguistic skills while contributing meaningfully to discussions that could shape policies affecting millions. As she worked alongside seasoned professionals, she realized how far she had come, from cleaning bookshelves in Richard's mansion to sitting at tables where decisions impacting nations were made. It was humbling yet empowering, reminding her of the importance of perseverance. During breaks between sessions, Maria formed close bonds with her fellow interns. They came from vastly different backgrounds. Some were fresh graduates from elite universities, while others had years of grassroots activism under their belts. Despite these differences, they shared a common goal: to use their talents to make the world a better place. Through late-night conversations over cups of coffee or walks along Lake Geneva, Maria learned about struggles and triumphs far beyond her own experiences. These interactions broadened her perspective, reinforcing her belief in the power of empathy and collaboration. Back home, news of Maria's achievements spread through her community like wildfire. Friends, family, and former co-workers celebrated her success, drawing inspiration from her journey. Clara often updated the staff at Richard's mansion with stories about Maria's adventures abroad. "She's not just representing herself," Clara told them during one of their study sessions. "She's representing all of us. Every time she speaks up, she's showing the world what we're capable of." Even Richard couldn't escape hearing about Maria's accomplishments. Locally, newspapers featured articles about her rise from humble beginnings to becoming an advocate for global change. At first, he dismissed the coverage as exaggerated fluff, but as the stories kept coming, he found himself unable to ignore them entirely. A part of him resented Maria's success. It reminded him of his own failures, but another part, grudgingly, admired her determination. He began to wonder if perhaps he had misjudged her all along. As months passed, Maria's role in the internship expanded. She was invited to lead smaller projects, including organizing a youth forum aimed at amplifying voices from marginalized communities. This project resonated deeply with her, as it aligned perfectly with her personal mission to uplift those overlooked by society. With guidance from her mentors, Maria designed a series of interactive workshops where participants could share their stories and brainstorm solutions to local challenges. The event drew widespread attention, attracting attendees from across Europe and beyond. On the final day of the forum, Maria stood before a packed auditorium, delivering a speech that would become one of the defining moments of her career. Dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit, she addressed the audience with warmth and conviction. "When I started this journey," she began, "I never imagined I'd be standing here today. My story is proof that no matter where you come from, or what obstacles you face, you have the power to rewrite your narrative. But true greatness isn't achieved alone. It's built through connection, understanding, and collective effort." Her words struck a chord with everyone present. Many attendees approached her afterward, thanking her for inspiring them to believe in their potential. Among them was a young woman named Amara, who had traveled from Nigeria to attend the forum. "Your story gives me hope," Amara said, tears glistening in her eyes. "If you can do it, so can I." The internship culminated in a formal ceremony where participants received certificates recognizing their contributions. Standing alongside her peers, Maria felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not just for herself, but for everyone who had supported her along the way. She knew this was only the beginning. There was still so much work to be done. Upon returning home, Maria wasted no time putting her newfound knowledge into action. She launched a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing educational resources and mentorship opportunities for underprivileged individuals. Drawing on her network of contacts from the internship, She secured funding and partnerships that helped bring her vision to life. Within months, the organization opened its first center in her hometown, offering free language classes, career counseling, and leadership training. Word of Maria's initiative reached Richard, who had grown increasingly isolated since her departure. His reputation had suffered greatly due to his treatment of Maria and the staff, leading to strained relationships with friends and business associates. One evening, unable to sleep, he picked up a magazine featuring an article about Maria's nonprofit. As he read about her impact, something stirred inside him, a mix of regret and admiration. For the first time, he acknowledged that his arrogance had blinded him to the value of people like Maria. Determined to make amends, Richard decided to reach out. He called Maria, unsure of how she would respond. To his surprise, she agreed to meet him at a cafe near her office. When they sat down together, the atmosphere was tense but respectful. "I want to apologize," Richard said after a long pause. "For everything. You didn't deserve the way I treated you." Maria studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you for saying that. Apologies are important, they show growth. But actions matter more. If you truly want to change, prove it by treating others with kindness and respect." Richard took her advice to heart. Over time, he began making changes in his life. He improved working conditions at the mansion, offered scholarships to employees seeking further education, and even volunteered at Maria's nonprofit. Though rebuilding trust took time, his efforts earned him a measure of redemption. Years later, Maria's legacy continued to grow. Her nonprofit expanded globally, reaching thousands of lives. She became a sought-after speaker, sharing her story at conferences and universities worldwide. Yet despite her fame, she remained grounded, always remembering the lessons she had learned along the way. Looking back, Maria reflected on how far she had come. What started as a defiant act of translation in Richard's study had blossomed into a movement that transcended borders and inspired countless others. Through courage, resilience, and unwavering faith in herself, she had proven that intelligence knows no boundaries, and that true strength lies in lifting others up. As she stood on stage addressing a crowd of eager listeners, Maria smiled, knowing she had fulfilled her purpose. Her journey wasn't just about personal success, it was about creating a ripple effect of hope and possibility. And though challenges lay ahead, she faced them with the same determination that had carried her this far. After all, she had already shown the world and herself that anything was possible when you dared to dream big.